Welcome to Bloom Today. We have a redemptive show for you today. We're going to be talking about how God never wastes a hurt.
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Ginny Priz, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Welcome, everybody. Today we're talking about how God never wastes a hurt. And I've had a few hurts that he could have wasted. How about you, Ginny?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's, you know, when you write a book called Ditch the Drama.
You might have had some drama.
Pretty sure it means I've had some drama in my life. Yeah, a few hurts here or there, a lot of hurts everywhere. Yeah, I think that just comes with living on this world. We have a whole lot of brokenness and drama that goes on.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever met anybody that didn't have hurt at some level somewhere in their lives.
Unless they're in denial.
That's true, and then they don't remember or admit to any of it anyway, but that's a whole different episode, isn't it? So with God never wasting a hurt, it was incredible to me that I had 40 years from when hurt started in my life. At a pretty intense level when I was only 2 years old, until Bloom in the Dark as a ministry got founded to the day 40 years later.
To the day.
To the day.
You know the day.
The day.
That's pretty incredible.
Did some research. I contacted my parents to look up.
I was going to say, I don't think you would remember the date.
Flight dates, passport dates, had to do with my mom leaving the country and me being taken care of by other people and being able to chase down the time frame. And that was after the attorneys had filed the paperwork for Bloom in the Dark to be incorporated. And I had no control over the dates for that either. But I started thinking, it's been about 40 years. And that's kind of a biblical number for training and for hardship and for God working in people's lives before ministry.
Yeah.
So when I started thinking, that was kind of 40-ish, because I was 2 and then 44-ish. Let me figure this out, and dug it up. And February 26th was the date for both, which is crazy when you think about the fact that God has a redemptive plan that can be that precise.
You're like an Israelite.
My 40 years in the wilderness. Yeah, Moses had 40 years wandering around the wilderness too, taking care of sheep. It's all part of that, and sometimes we don't see that till way
Oh yeah, I mean,
later.
When you're in the middle of it, you can't see the forest for the trees. It's just pain and hurt and the questions as to why, right? Why did this have to happen? Why did I have to go through this? Why couldn't you just take this away? All of that questioning always comes up when we're right in the middle of that pain.
Right, and so when I would ask God about that, he kept telling me, it's part of your training. And of course, my answer was, God, I don't want whatever job takes this kind of training. For real, I don't want any job like that. And the fact, though, is that now that I have the job that takes abuse and brokenness as my training, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Praise God.
Because I not only get to see the redemptive healing in my own life and the miracles he's done and the places he's mended and restored so many things, but I also have an opportunity to watch him do it in your life and in other people's lives as they find that same hope and healing that's available to all of us.
Absolutely.
In that relationship with Christ. And so,
I mean, our first instinct is to sit in that place of hopelessness and self-pity and figure out what, again, the whys, and instead of really moving through it and trying to see things from a bigger perspective.
we kind of wallow.
We wallow, that's right, exactly. And I mean, I did my fair share of wallowing, that's for sure. And I noticed what tended to get me out of the wallowing, especially after I had my DUI and I was in this completely broken, lost place where all of my identity at that point had just come crumbling down around me. And it was finally this place of hopelessness that I had come to. But what got me out of that was thinking if I could help just one person with this. And all of a sudden my my perspective started to change, where it would be worth it if I could help someone out of this. And then it was a process of, okay, I have to heal, because the only way for this to be worth it and for it to be redeemed is if God can use it with someone else.
So that way we don't have to keep being just mad about it or hurt about it. We can start seeing that there's maybe an ultimate good
that can come out of it, absolutely.
That God does. Because I know Satan just wants us to be mad at God. Why did you allow it? Why did this happen to me? It's not fair. And all of the stuff.
If you go through, you know, the Bible has a ton of stories of people who have been all through brokenness and bitterness and bumps along the way. Some serious bumps, like Joseph had some serious bumps. Jail and slavery, you know, all that. It's just a little bitty bumps. Thank goodness that hasn't been my story per se. But what I really love is that God used all of that as his preparation, very similar to how he used your preparation. And one of my pastors had said at some point, used the analogy of a slingshot, that in order to go further, you have to pull back that rock and that slingshot even further. So the negative actually increases the positive. Isn't that interesting?
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's my science background.
Physics. This is physics
in the kitchen, no less. I'm just laughing, but seriously, if I had no understanding of the deep, dark brokenness and the hopelessness and the despair and the valley of the shadow of death that we're familiar with in Psalm 23, if it weren't for all of that, then what would I have to talk about here?
How could I be of use to others? How could I help guide them through their hurts and hopeless places if I had never been there myself and gone through it and healed?
I might be able to have a good cooking show in a kitchen, but I don't know that I would be really good about talking about using the fertilizer of our past to bloom today. Yeah. Because I wouldn't understand that fertilizer concept for the ugliness and stinkiness and darkness of it.
Yeah. You know, we can actually ask God. I think, you know, we can ask God to redeem whatever pain and brokenness that we've been through or that we're carrying with us today. God, I ask that you would come into the lives of those people who are watching today, who are struggling with this pain and they're asking that why. Would you help them to ask you to come into this story, come into their story, and start to understand how they can heal from it and how this past pain can be redeemed?
And that's a great point for why it's worth fighting Satan on staying stuck in that victim or damaged place, and to actually start working toward healing is the fact that God can bring in healing and then Satan doesn't win. But redemption from the past is a great starting point. Yeah. If that's all that came out of the healing process, that would be worth it.
That he redeemed the past.
That he redeemed the past and used it for good. That in and of itself would be worth it. And he tells us that he uses the pain as a catalyst to healing. You know, like if you get hurt somewhere, if you don't feel it, you don't know to go like put a Band-Aid on it or put, you know, medicine or something on it to get it help for healing.
Sure.
Pain.
Or get yourself to the ER if you need to.
That's so true. And I've been to the ER a few times. We don't realize that we need help, that something's really wrong with us many times until we have the pain. And so recognizing that the pain can be a catalyst to healing rather than the end of our story, even though it feels like a rock bottom, which I've referenced in one of the stories in Bloom in the Dark as laced with razor blades.
Oh,
it can be pretty painful. Yeah. But recognizing that in 2 Corinthians 12:10, it says, "For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Because in Christ's strength, we learn a whole different version of strength and resiliency and healing and capacity, because in my most broken place, I had nothing left. And Christ still stepped into that place. And he filled that. He created the life and the capacity to keep moving and to heal, moving forward. So, yeah, out of my desperation and darkness, I got a whole lot closer to him.
As did I in my own desperation. Not in your desperation, but in my desperation, I absolutely
Yeah, I didn't know you in the worst of my
lot
desperation.
and I didn't know you in the worst of mine. But isn't it interesting how God works? We know the same God because he uses the same tools. He brings us along. And we don't have to sit in that place where we were. That we can heal, we can move forward and say, you know what? I am not going to listen to the voice of the enemy. I am not staying in that hopeless place. This doesn't mean that I'm broken forever. This means I can be an ex-victim.
Cut my shirt, yay! Means been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Amen, amen. Been there. And we're not going to stay there.
No, we're not staying in that brokenness. Yeah. But it does take admitting to be a victim sometimes and admitting the brokenness before we can get out of it and become an ex.
Right.
You know, it's hard to become an ex-wife if you've never been a wife. It's hard to be an ex-victim if you've never been a victim.
Absolutely.
So healing from that and then being empowered to walk in God's plan for your life.
Yes. Yes, saying, okay, this is part of my story. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to bring it forward into the healing. But just owning it and walking away from, okay, that was my past, and now I get to write a new story. God gets to come in and help me write a brand new story. That's empowering.
It really is, and that we're not stuck where we are, though we do have to go back there sometimes to process it and work through it.
Sure.
And dig up what is going on so that we can take it to God for real healing and redemption. In 2 Corinthians 1:5, it says, just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. Back to Christ. Relationship with him is the only thing that will actually get you to be able to admit the brokenness, to be able to start healing, to be able to become an ex-victim, which gets us to a place that we can start sharing that hope with others.
Yes, because if we don't have it for ourselves, we can't share it with others. So we need it from him first so that then we can communicate it and bring it forward, which has been amazing. There was a definite clear point in my journey where God said, I'm so happy that you're here and that you are enjoying this freedom. Now it's time to give it away. This isn't just for you to absorb and keep absorbing and keep absorbing. It's to pour out as well. And that was a mind shift that I had to make. I really liked my nice cocoon.
Yeah, I wanted to heal so that I could be healed.
Right.
To make my life better, to help improve how I felt, how I went through the day. And yeah, he was definitely not about just leaving my healing for me.
Right.
He wanted my healing to reach out and encourage and give hope to others, let people know they're not alone and there's hope, which we talk about a lot.
A lot.
But we're going to keep talking about it.
Absolutely, because it's true and it will never stop being true. In Genesis 50:20, it says, people may intend evil, but God can still do good, including the saving of many lives. Joseph's
story again, which is such a beautiful picture of slavery and jail and all the bad things that Satan threw at him, and it didn't seem fair, it didn't seem right, but that prepared him to be in the place to rule, be the second in command for the world power at the time.
Amen.
Just hard to comprehend the little shepherd boy ending up ruling a foreign world power.
I mean, it's possible. Anything is possible, right?
It is, and the journey just happened to be through.
Absolutely. Well, if you'd like to dig into this topic a little bit more, we have a coaching tool for you on our website at bloomtodaytv.com. You can go there and download. It's just a worksheet where we have some of the same points that we've shared today, and then some additional questions to help you really apply this lesson to your life, to let you dig in deeper so that you can have more hope and more healing, knowing that you're not alone.
And some fun exercises too sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How you can move forward rather than staying stuck where you are if you are in that hopeless place and looking for more.
So is that where our life coaching experience comes into play, is through coaching tools?
I think so. We are trained for this.
It's an awesome way to use our stories.
And I think we have a poem. Would you read that for us? I love this because we talk about turning, going from the past and making a new chapter.
And the fun thing about this is our guest today that we're going to have was actually the inspiration for this poem. And that makes it a fun way to just say, hey, you're having an impact. So it's called Making a 180. I can't keep going this way. My life is on the line. This road goes over a cliff into hopeless night. There's no stopping. There's no standing still. I'm always moving somewhere, but this way will only kill. I'm making a 180. I've got to turn around. Thinking and wishing haven't changed the road I'm on. I want a life of hope, a future without strife. I want loving relationships with people choosing life. My past has happened to me, broken me deep inside. The choices that I made set me on this downhill ride. I'll find some mentors, some people living free, a life worth living where I want to be. They say I must let go of all the damage and hate. I must forgive all of them and trust God with their fate. Forgive myself, you say, but I chose this life. I should have stopped sooner. I shouldn't have survived. I've been my very own worst terrorist, sabotaging my future. My thoughts of self-hate leaving no room for nurture. Christ died for me, forgave the worst I've found, so I could stop before I crashed and turn my life around. So I accept his great sacrifice, forgiveness for my sins. Then I forgive others to break these heavy chains. Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? What am I thinking? What is my destiny? I thought, then I said. What I did, I became. My habits made me the character I own. I think, I choose, I change. My 180 is just for me. I will fight to stay on this path, to live my destiny. So tell us about our guest that inspired this.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Well, our guest is the creator of the 180 program.
Surprise.
Right? Amazing. It's this awesome. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to describe it. I am going to let her do it. She's a coach herself, I know, and she speaks all over the place, including jails across the country. So please help me in welcoming Meredith Kendall.
Why don't you give her a hand, Ginny?
Absolutely. It's so good to see you.
Oh. My very own hand. Do I get to keep it?
No, I'm sorry. I can only lend it.
I need a third one.
Oh.
I need a third one now.
Maybe for rent.
Oh, for rent.
I can rent it out. Oh, I've never thought about renting out my hand.
A way to fund the ministry. We're going to rent out a helping hand.
Oh,
there
perfect.
You go.
Meredith, tell us about a little bit about the 180 program that you developed.
The 180 program, we started this actually 14 years ago when we started working with single moms living in poverty. They would come and ask us questions. We'd have them over for dinner. And basically...
When you say us, you mean you and your husband?
Me and my husband. And basically, funny that you keep saying the word redemptive, if you will take this 8-week study, you will write your redemptive story with the backdrop of the cross without even realizing it.
Wow.
And so...
I just got chills.
And... we use my story in it of growing up with abuse and that kind of stuff, and how finding Jesus and finding that relationship, but it wasn't through religion, it was through that relationship. It was through searching the scriptures. It was through changing the way I was thinking and starting over. And I tell people all the time, my husband was my 180 person. You know, he was the one who saw something different in me when I was in all those self-sabotaging, self-defeating cycles of life.
Right.
And he was like, you've got to stop. You've got to stop doing this. There's something more for you than continuing in this cycle.
Wow.
So that's how it started.
And I got to sit through your course when you were filming it, right?
Yes, we were filming it. We did an 8-week video series because this is used across the country. And a lot of people were saying, well, you can't come teach it. So would you consider doing a video series? So that is now available for people to use across the country. It's just a DVD. It's 28 minutes. They pop it in, then they can teach around it.
Which is awesome. And getting to watch that live inspired that poem. I went and wrote it, just flowed right out because it was all pieces
It was.
of what you're teaching that I had a chance to see how that had worked in my life to actually change that around, which is really cool.
And Meredith, you had something happen to you where you were attacked.
I was attacked.
And I love how the story ends, but would you share with us how it began?
In 2011, January, actually, we had been teaching at a facility. On Wednesdays, we were teaching children, well, teenagers, and it was kind of a last resort, getting them out of their habit loop kind of thing and saying, hey, there's a different way of life. We were actually bringing in ex-gang members that were in wheelchairs with bullets still in their back saying, this is the life. It is not the TV life, kind of stuff. And there was a mix-up in the class time on Wednesday night, and so I left. And when I'd parked on the side of the street. It was a neighborhood. Didn't think anything about it. There was a guy standing there. I waved at him just because it was a neighborhood. Well, Thursday I taught at the same place. And so Thursday, broad daylight, came and taught. I taught women at that time, came back, just hung up the phone with my daughter. It was a beautiful, beautiful January day here in Tennessee. And I'd put everything away. And the guy was still there the next morning. And again, I'd waved at him, smiled at him, and went about my business. What I didn't know was that somebody had sent him there to shut me up. We had been working with those children and those teenagers. I keep calling them children because I do have I'm a grandmother. Anyway, but he was sent there because we had been working with the teens and one of them was getting out. And you don't just leave the gang. Somebody gets hurt for it. And he'd let me put everything away. And I felt something. And the first blow took me down between, the door was open, and it took me down in between the door and the jamb of the van. And he just kept pounding on me. And I still remember going, God, this is going to hurt when he finishes. Could you send your angels, because this is really going to hurt, And I really believe that he sent somebody and that there was an angel scaring him. And it was scaring him really bad because he took off running like somebody was after him. And there was nobody there. I mean, there were some guys working down the street. They'd been working on a condo or a duplex, and they were, working, and there were some other guys, but nobody was there coming to my rescue, because you couldn't see what was happening where I was.
Sure.
And he got done, and he quit, which was a miracle in itself, because I was told he was supposed to kill me.
Praise God.
And I got up, never lost consciousness, and I remember as I was falling down in between the door and the jamb, him going into my pocket. Well, he grabbed my cell phone, and he'd taken it so I couldn't call for help. So unlike in the movies where the damsel in distress is yelling for help, nobody came came to help me. Matter of fact, the guys at the end were just standing there going, whatever, kind of, and then there were two other guys yelling that I got what I deserved. And luckily at that point in time, I carried two cell phones, one for work, one for personal, so I called 911 myself. And just that fast, the helicopter's up, the police are coming, the ambulance is coming, the fire trucks, whatever. And
you had a lot of physical damage from that.
You still have symptoms.
I still do have symptoms. I have no feeling in my face. It broke the orbital bone. And
which I would never think that ever.
Can't tell,
you
looking
have a
at
beautiful face. You'd never be able to know unless you mentioned it.
And that's one of the things I have to live with, because at any given time my muscles can relax and my face can start to droop, kind of thing. But yeah, my husband was warned when he met me in the hospital that I looked like Rocky Balboa at the end of Rocky, and
seen that. That's all messed up and swollen and painful.
So,
but I mean, physically, you were able to heal. And
I was physically able to heal.
And emotionally, I know that you're still healing from that as well. But in the meantime, as God comes through and heals this, He's also opened doors for you.
He has, very much so.
To help others. Can you share with?
I am now a victim under.
Okay.
No, an ex-victim.
I am an ex-victim, but for the state and for the federal government, whatever, I'm a victim. So I get to go into jails and prisons across the country under the Victim Awareness Act, which was a program where you get to come in and teach and talk based upon your experience as the victim that somebody has created, okay? So I was allowed into a jail, it was prison, and yes, there's a difference, just to FYI. A lot of people don't know that. Jail is, about a year, a couple of years, but prison's long-term.
Right.
And so there was a prison in Columbus, Ohio, outside of Columbus, Ohio, that invited me in. And we're sitting there, getting ready to walk in, really hot day, I'm telling y'all. And going through the gates and walking in, and we're in the cell. We're actually in their physical cell, and they've moved all the bunks to the side, and they've put chairs out, and they've got all these guys sitting here. And so I'm standing in the front of the cell, and the only way out is through all of them. My husband is sitting back with the chaplain, and I'm sitting there, and I'm doing my little spiel, and basically it's an overview of the book. But I use the whole a victim and the attack. And during the talk, this guy is like, yep. And I'm like, okay. And I'm telling him like where I'm from, what I've done, telling him about the book. And he's like, knows too much about me. And I'm like, okay, I can't get out of here. Panic attack, anxiety going through the roof kind of stuff. Finally, it's over. I beeline it to the guy, and so does my husband. And we're like, okay, excuse me, who are you? And why do you know so much about me? He says, I was in your class when you first started in the jail in 2010. I said, okay. He said, I was transferred up here. He said, and just this morning, I was praying, God, if you are really real, you need to send me an angel. He said, and then you walked.
I love it.
I'm like, well, thank you very much, but do you understand I had to be beaten up 18 months ago because of this?
To be able to be the angel
to be able to
that
be your
you
angel.
needed.
Yeah.
Which means she can win.
Oh, absolutely.
Does that let her win?
Absolutely. I think
I'm just wondering
I think we'll definitely allow. Meredith, you are our ex-victim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Which gives you the necklace that has the ex-victim symbol on it. It gives you, of course, our tissues and chocolates, which, as you can tell from our table, in the back of our book and whatever, the whole theme of tissues and chocolates showing that we can have emotions and tears and struggle and process, whether it's PTSD like you've had from the attack, or whether it's the process of facing the kind of people who did you harm and all the different pieces of that God is using that victim piece to actually create the ex-victim piece that is giving back to everybody.
Absolutely, and building even more freedom and
and
that you are being a light in all of that. You are actually using, as we say, the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. I love how God uses it.
He does.
We just get to bloom today.
A free PDF copy of the Bloom in the Dark book and a full list of Bloom Today's coaching tools can be found on bloomtodaytv.com. Then visit Bloom Today's Facebook group for deeper conversation.